As you probably know, the first DLC for S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 Heart of Chernobyl, called Cost of Hope, comes out this summer. Two factions that received too little attention in the base game, Freedom and Duty, will play key roles in it. They were and still are serious players fighting for their own ideology and influence in the zone. In this video I will explain everything you need to know about the Freedom faction before you play the DLC. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video and leave a comment below it. It helps the channel grow, thank you. Freedom is an old S.T.A.L.K.E.R faction that sees the zone not as a threat to humanity, but as an opportunity for it. It declares everyone's right to the gifts and the riches of the zone, advocates peaceful coexistence with it, opposes keeping it hidden from the world, and rejects any state or military control over it, at least in theory. Freedom's internal structure is not clearly defined and is largely built on trust and mutual respect, which has led to the emergence of traitors. Despite this, its members were experienced and disciplined enough to establish themselves as an influential and powerful faction during major events in the zone. Its ideals are reflected in its logo, a snarling wolf that symbolizes nature, freedom and the ability to defend one's own interests. Freedom's ideological rival is Duty, whose goal is to destroy the zone. As a result, these two factions fought wars over control of territories and spheres of influence within it. In addition to more accessible areas, Freedom was also interested in exploring the northern reaches of the zone and the X-laboratories, with the most notable event being the expedition through the legendary Brain Scorcher, led by McLuhan. After McLuhan became Freedom's leader, the faction's ideology shifted from pursuing ideals to finding ways to profit from the zone as much as possible, a direction that closely resembles anarcho-capitalistic ideas. This change was strongly influenced by the signing of the D4 Treaty, which ended the war with Duty and transferred their former base at the Rostock factory into Freedom's hands. Control over trade routes, combined with McLuhan's introduction of an electronic currency, coupons, which quickly replaced older methods of payment, turned Freedom into the richest S.T.A.L.K.E.R faction in the zone. At the same time, not everyone agrees with this course. Many Freedom veterans miss the old days, while outsiders criticize the faction as little more than a gathering of traders willing to do business even with bandits. A secret opposition is gradually forming under the leadership of Lukash, Freedom's former leader, while Mavka and Shah are plotting against McLuhan behind his back. The faction is sitting on a powder keg that will explode shortly after the signal. The faction is known to have been founded in 2010 by a S.T.A.L.K.E.R named Chekhov, who led it until the spring of 2012. At the time, Freedom was based in the Dark Valley on the garbage, in the area of the factory. The following year, the so-called Super Mission significantly reshaped the zone, changing the position of anomalous fields and opening new paths and territories, which caused a conflict between Freedom and Duty over influence in the regions of the Garbage, the Red Forest and the city of Limansk. This event became known as a faction war. In addition, Freedom encountered the mysterious mercenary syndicate for the first time, about which nothing had been known until now, and which may return in the DLC. Despite everything, Freedom survived, though not without major changes. The faction's main base moved from the Dark Valley to the army warehouses after Freedomers, with the help of the mercenary S.T.A.L.K.E.R, drove out the military forces stationed there, who had been abandoned by their command after the Supremation. From there, it was easier for Freedom to defend the barrier, one of the passages to the north of the zone, from where waves of mutants and after the Supremation monolithians as well were trying to break through. After the next Super Mission, which happened as a result of Strelok's second breakthrough to the CNPP, in the autumn of 2011, access to the Red Forest and Limansk disappeared, the faction war began to die down, and Freedom and Duty entered a period of lull. In the spring of 2012, Chekhov left the zone, while Lukash became the leader. Meanwhile, McLuhan set out through the so-called Brain Scorcher, which blocked the path to the north of the zone, with a not fully clear purpose, connected to the possibility of controlling the appearance of anomalies. Later, the lull in the war was nearly broken by a Duty member called Skull and several of his men, who blew up the wall on the western side of Freedom's base and attacked it, but the assault failed. S.T.A.L.K.E.R shutdown of the Brain Scorcher opened the way to new territories in the zone, where Freedom Squads quickly rushed in to expand their influence, search for the Klondike of artifacts and the Wish Granter. Once again, they clashed with Duters. Around the same time, McLuhan's squad was found alive, which strengthened his reputation as a strong leader. In the summer of 2012, a unique situation emerged at Yanev Station, where the Freedom Squad under Loki's command was forced into a temporary truce with an opposing Duty Squad and had to share the station with them, since it was the only reliable shelter from emissions in the region. The outcome of this situation remained unknown. Most likely, both factions were driven out by Colonel Degtyarev's men, who would later form the Corps. A separate topic worth attention is the location of Freedom's main base. Trilogy players are familiar with the base at the army warehouses, which Freedom occupied. However, its new location further away from the center of the zone, in heart of Chernobyl, makes the logic of the trilogy's events somewhat problematic. This place still makes sense in the context of its proximity to the rainbow antennas, one of the elements of the Brain Scorcher. This places a barrier on the approaches to the Malachite region, but this does not fully resolve other questions, such as S.T.A.L.K.E.R's use of a radio transmitter to contact the mercenaries trapped in the spatial anomaly in 2011, or the strategic usefulness of the base, primarily because of its proximity to the Red Forest and Limansk. According to one theory, Freedom maintained control not only over the army warehouses, but also over the military base at the Volkov SAM site, north of Rostock. Its position almost perfectly matches the position of the army warehouses in clear sky. This control, however, must have lasted only until the events of Shadow of Chernobyl, since by the events of Kolo Pripyat in August 2012, this location is empty. The expedition to the north changed McLuhan. His squad ended up in an unknown X-lab, possibly X-17, where, according to him, he met the MDST scientists, and possibly even their leaders, the C consciousness. The information he received from them gave McLuhan a new perspective on the processes taking place in the zone. But exactly that perspective is, we will probably learn in the DLC. Because of this, a conflict began between Lukash and McLuhan, ending with the former's disappearance. Not longer after that, in the winter of 2013, Freedom's new leader decided to launch an assault on Duty's Rostock. Although he failed to take the factory, this once again strengthened McLuhan's authority and exposed Duty's weaknesses, which played into his hands during the signing of the D4 treaty between Ward, Freedom, Duty and Noon. According to D4, imposed by Ward under the threat of destruction in the spring of 2013, peace was established between Freedom and Duty, while Rostock passed under Freedom's control and became a free trade zone. With Freedom's relocation, life at Rostock changed. The famous arena, run by Arnie, which attracted wealthy stalkers to watch fights to the death, was shut down and only reopened in 2016. Most probably because of its popularity and profitability. The well-known barkeep was allowed to keep working on the condition that he supported Freedom, while nearby a bar run by Freedomer Ganja opened and overshadowed the 100 Reds bar, which Duty members would still visit from time to time in the following years. Being in such profitable and secure position, McLuhan managed to carry out his most successful business project, the introduction of his own digital currency, known as coupons. Unlike the old Soviet rubles, stalkers quickly began to trust coupons, not simply because of their availability on PDAs and separate memory cards, but also because of Freedom's position, protected by D4 from major threats such as Duty. Furthermore, McLuhan built a network of connections across the entire zone to secure his own untouchability and that of his faction for the many years to come. Traders flooded Rostock, attracting stalkers and paying McLuhan a percentage of their income, which made Freedom the richest faction in the zone. The long period of peace finally ended after the attempt of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R Institute to connect to the generators in the center of the zone failed in 2021. The members of Noon returned to their old traditions, once again turning into the monolith faction, while Ward stopped being the guarantor of peace in the zone and focused on fighting Monolithians and defending its own territories. Sometime later, the D4 treaty was broken and the new war between Freedom and Duty began. In its external relations, Freedom maintains neutrality with almost all factions, since everyone is a potential customer. Where diplomacy does not work, coupons quickly turn from a simple currency into McLuhan's weapon, used for political and economic pressure. Also, formal peace with duty exists through D4, and indirect confrontation and occasional clashes deep in the zone continue between the factions. For example, McLuhan regularly finances Shah, the leader of the bandits in the west of the garbage, hoping to establish his control over the entire region, which would threaten duty because of the proximity of their base at the cement factory to the garbage. Another connection with the bandits can be seen in the trade agreements between McLuhan and Sonia Kalina, who does business together with Sultan, Zeton's kingpin. Interestingly enough, the leader of Freedom also trades with Beard, the leader of the free stalkers of Zeton, even offering him small discounts, so having smaller shipments. Freedom also has relations with a group of mercenaries under the command of Bogi, whom McLuhan hired for additional protection of Rostock. Officially, the IPSF treats Freedomers the same way as all other violators of the zone's perimeter, while Freedom's ideology stands first and foremost for the zone, completely free of the military. However, it is known that the bullet armor suits used by Freedomers were bought from the military themselves. Broader relations can be traced indirectly, namely through the scientists of the Malachite STC, who are under IPSF protection and actively cooperate with stalkers. For this kind of cooperation, the scientists would need a large supply of coupons, and Freedom is the only source that could have provided it, making the connection between Freedom and state structures almost obvious. After all, artifacts somehow have to be sent to the mainland through the perimeter. There are also serious grounds to believe that Freedom has trade relations with Dekhtярev's corps as well, despite the fact that Dekhtяrev is a colonel in the security service of Ukraine. This is indicated by the need to guard the road through the Red Forest from bandits, especially the renegades and the mutants, from which McLuhan hires local hunters, such as Archip Lyhin. Rare artifacts from Pripyat could be a potential commodity. This could explain both the need for the northern routes and the expensive equipment used by members of the Corps. It is also worth mentioning the traders of Rostock and their connections. The first of them is Regman, who collects and resells used weapons and equipment. Because of this, his business is always active, especially during conflicts in the zone. His customer base and sources of supply mostly consist of ordinary stalkers, regardless of faction, which is why his competitor, Eugene, spreads rumors that he helped dutiers right before Freedom's conflict with them. One of Regman's separate contacts is Pomor, who loots the bodies of stalkers who die in the poppy field and supplies all the goods to Rostock. Varan's bandits are also connected to this profitable business. Snag, disguised as Lex the Legend, tricks stalkers by luring them to the poppy field, where they allegedly can rest. Unlike Regman, the trader Eugene offers new and high-quality goods, so he pays for this with his dependence on suppliers. Nothing is known about his confirmed contacts, but it can be assumed that besides stalkers, he has connections with the IPSF and the mainland. After the signal, Monolith fighters attacked a number of IPSF facilities, which may have caused disruptions in Eugene's supply lines. Birch tries not to get involved in the dispute between Regman and Eugene. She mostly trades in armor, but also sells night vision goggles and accepts mutant parts. This points to her likely contacts with the military, the Malachite STC, and mutant hunters from the Red Forest. Trade relations between Birch and Quiet, a known trader south of the Wild Island, are known to have existed before the signal. It is also worth remembering the barkeep, who runs the 100 Reds bar and was a key figure in opening the way to the north of the zone in the past, helping S.T.A.L.K.E.R and revealing the truth about the Brain Scorcher and the X-Labs to stalkers. Now he operates under McLuhan, fearing possible revenge from duty. Barkeep still maintains contacts with Sidorovich, the trader in Kordun, with whom he controlled almost all trade in the zone in 2012, and they are even planning to do it again after the signal. Finally, we can mention Brick, who runs a store where he gives Freedomers the freshest bread in the zone. This bread is ordered by McLuhan himself, but where it is produced is unknown. The fresh bread cannot be found anywhere but in Rostock. From the outside, McLuhan appears to be a friendly, attentive and a pleasant person, but behind this image lies a cold, pragmatic and manipulative character. His constant goal is to extract the maximum benefit from any situation. To him, people are just another resource, one that he does not mind spending for the sake of expanding his own influence. Perhaps it was this way of thinking that turned McLuhan from a businessman in the mainland into a criminal who had to flee into the zone. His entrepreneurial talent caught the attention of Freedom's leader Chekhov, which eventually brought him into freedom. A major mystery is his expedition through the Brain Scorcher, during which he allegedly met the MDST scientists and possibly even the representative of the sea consciousness in an unknown X-lab. Some people came to the conclusion that during that period McLuhan and his men became agents of the sea consciousness. The scientists would have benefited from having such an influential person under their control, and this could explain why the members of McLuhan's squad felt as if they had spent only a week in the laboratory. Even so, almost a month had actually passed. The biggest problem with this theory is that agents fundamentally should not know who they are working for, while information about McLuhan's meeting with the scientists spread not only to Freedom higher circles, but also to Circus archives. Therefore, another, more interesting theory suggests itself, that says that McLuhan did not actually meet the scientists, but the Psi-embryo that told him the truth about the nature of the zone. The Psi-embryo could also have been the reason why anomalies blocked the laboratory exit, as well as the reason for such a major time shift. A secret relationship between McLuhan and the Psi-embryo could be a very interesting story element in the new DLC. Next, the former leader of Freedom, Lukash, will return in the DLC. He fought for the idea, not for coupons, which is why Freedom veterans still remember him. Although many consider him missing, it is known that before the signal he was acting in secretly, preparing for an expedition to the Iron Forest region near the scene PP. For this, Lukash needed the so-called aggression suppressor, which can force zombified people not to attack others. Whether the device reached him remains unknown. Lukash was an ideological mentor to Mavka, who entered the zone at a very young age, and in whom the Freedom leader saw great potential because of her ambition, idealism and determination. With each failed expedition, Mavka did not stop, but gained experience and continued moving forward. She dislikes McLuhan because his goal does not match the ideals of true freedom, for which the leader of Freedom pushed her into the role of arena commentator. It is known that she secretly goes on expeditions in search of secret documents, and is also suspected of conspiring with the bandit leader Shah against McLuhan, even managing to supply him with a unique weapon ordered from the mainland. She also knows Suslov, an important scientist of Project X and a member of the Clear Sky faction who survived the events of 2011. I suspect that Lukash may die in the DLC, thereby developing Mavka's character and giving her the opportunity to lead the new Freedom. An even more hidden Freedomer who may play a major role in the DLC is the first leader of Freedom, Chekhov. As it turns out, he is not only alive, but still takes part in events in the zone. He has serious connections with the mercenary Skull, the antagonist of the Stories Untold content update, and the mercenary Nord, who will definitely be present in the DLC. Chekhov is interested in a deadly radio frequency, studied by research groups under Assistant Professor Medulin, which is likely connected to Laboratory X-16, where the so-called brain in jar is located. The exact situation Chekhov is in remains unknown, but it seems that he is hiding on the mainland, possibly from the supervisory board which controls Ward and Circa, meaning they may also influence the events of the first DLC. We can also hope for the return of old characters in the DLC, who may also play an important role in the events. The first is Loki, who led the Freedom Squad near the Jupiter plant and the Yaniv station. He was far from a minor figure and was friends with Freedom leaders, but nothing is known about his fate for now, so there is a hope for his appearance in the DLC. The same applies to Freedom's former technician, S.T.A.L.K.E.R, who lived through the faction war, the situation at the Yaniv station, and also visited Pripyat. In the past, he had difficult relations with mercenaries, which could play a part in the DLC as well. The last person on the list is Vano, who, together with Degtyarev, crossed the Pripyat 1 underpass, which may also return in the DLC. According to the good ending in Call of Pripyat, he led a group of anomaly researchers, which could be tied to Freedom's expedition to the Iron Forest. Thanks for watching this video. A similar video about duty is already being made or is already published, so subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more quality Stalker lore. Hit the like button and leave a comment to support this channel. Good hunting, Stalker!